Hello again. Welcome to another session of the 18th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment Virtual Conference. I'm Bob Hales. I'm your moderator. Don't forget, we're sponsored by the Journal of Educators Online, JEO. It's a refereed journal. It has some really excellent articles dating back to 2004. You shouldn't have any trouble finding something of interest to you. In addition, hey, maybe you want to submit an article to it. Just go to thejeo.com and look around and submit, so forth. Um, so we have with us again Terry Doyle. He's Professor Emeritus of Ferris State University. He was the senior instructor for faculty development and has worked with faculty at 200 campuses around the world and given over 100 keynote addresses, all dealing with learner-centered approach to teaching and learning. He's also authored or co-authored 7 books dealing with the learning-centered approach to teaching and student learning. So, Harris, let me turn it over to you. And let's
Well,
talk
just a minute.
about,
I'm
about the brain.
trying to figure out how to get my PowerPoint to show. What am I doing
Okay,
wrong?
you're going to share, right? At the bottom.
Just a minute. Sorry. Share screen.
Or more likely, just share that one app so we don't see your whole desktop.
Where? I'm sorry.
No, if you could just share everything, but you also should have the option to just share your presentation app.
Share where? I'm sorry. I
Oh,
don't.
right at the bottom, the toolbar at the
Yeah.
bottom, say share.
The share screen.
Yeah. But also, then it should give you some thumbnails to also share an individual application. But we'll take share screen.
I'm sorry. I'm screwing this up, but I don't. It's not letting me share my screen.
But do you see the options when you click on share screen?
Says not now. Select window or screen.
Okay, so select a window or screen, whatever it says.
Okay, document to Word, Zoom. I don't know.
Okay. Okay, so we got your whole desktop.
Can you see that?
Yeah. Well, the
You can
whole
see,
screen, yeah. So,
okay, you can see it and hear me.
yeah,
Yes?
yeah.
Okay, so I'm ready to go. I apologize. I've only been doing this for 55 years. You think I'd figure it out?
Nah, but you want to
Okay,
share slides or documents or what?
the slides. Can you see my slide?
No, I see uh, the Zoom windows and so forth. So you just picked the wrong screen to share.
I'm sorry, but I don't under,
Oh, I think you get tech support right here with you.
Stop sharing.
I stop sharing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Then go back and click share and then choose your, well, What are you using? PowerPoint or Google Slides?
PowerPoint.
Okay, so select when you click share, you should see several windows. Choose the window that has the actual PowerPoint in.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay, that's good.
Now you can see it.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that's all we see now, just that.
All right. Thank you. Sorry, everybody.
Well, this was a new understanding how the brain learns, right?
Right. I wish my brain was working. Okay. So good morning, everyone. What we're going to do for the next 50 minutes is explore some of the newer research about brain waves and the role they play in learning. For most of you, I'm sure, that have been in teaching for a long time, we always kind of, at least for the last 30 or 40 years, believe that human intelligence, was a result of how fast our neurons would fire and how many more connections, synapses we could grow in order to add neural connections into the brain. This was kind of held as the main definition of what we meant when we talked about intelligence. We know that when neurons fire, they produce electrical signals and form brain waves. What we now understand is that these neural brain waves, these oscillations, even though we kind of knew of them since the 20s, play a significant role in how learning occurs in the brain. And not only is that role important, it's actually the main role of how the brain learns new information and how it remembers that information. So the findings show us that these waves cause the brain to operate through rhythms, patterns of oscillation. So let's take a look. Basically, what we're saying is that these rhythms are precisely timed oscillations or waves of electrical activity, and they synchronize across all brain regions. So there are 5 kinds of brain waves that we're aware of. And these brain waves actually are what determine our ability to think. Okay, so everything that we're able to do as humans are the result of the interactions that these different brain waves have in terms of how they interact. The McGovern Institute at MIT found that this mechanism, this timing mechanism of the brain waves, is what allows the different parts of the brain to communicate efficiently. So what I would like to do today is to walk you through the 5 different kinds of brain waves and the roles that they play in learning. And then maybe more importantly is how do we enhance brain waves so that our students can actually function at a higher level than perhaps they do, because they're not aware of how they can enhance this process. So every thought we have is the result of brain waves sweeping across our brain tissue at about 6 to 8 times per second. Okay, so this rhythmic pattern can be measured, which we know that because we have the different hertzes, the speeds at which these brain waves work. They can be traced through various neurological and technological tools that we have. And most importantly, they can be enhanced. Okay, so let's take a look. This means that we can improve brainwave function, which improves cognitive performance, will allow a student to have better focus, improve memory, and enhance problem-solving skills, which are all the things that any teacher would love for their students to have improved. So if you're looking for a good analogy, if you're going to talk to your students about what I am talking with you about today, a good analogy is a jazz ensemble, where certain parts of the ensemble start playing, and then they recede, and then other parts start playing, and then they step back. And that's kind of how the brain waves work. Certain brain waves are very active during sleep, but are not active during, for example, when we are trying to learn something new. they step back and other waves take over. So each brain wave operates at its own speed or vibration. This ranges from delta waves that are at only about 0.5 cycles per second, all the way up to gamma waves that can operate at 100 cycles per second or vibrations per second. So let's start with delta waves. Excuse me. And these are the slowest of the brain waves. Probably they are the most important brain wave when it comes to what do we remember of what it is that we learn. They play a critical role in memory consolidation. They also play a critical role in preparing the brain for learning the next day. We've always known that sleep had a huge role in memory. We always knew that memory was or consolidation and the determining of what's important to be remembered and what will be tossed aside happened during sleep. We now know that it's delta waves that are playing that role in terms of assisting in the transfer of this new information from the hippocampus to the neocortex, and this happens almost entirely during our sleep. And that's why where delta waves play their biggest role. They improve the efficiency of how our neurons process and store information. And most importantly for our students to understand is that sleep is what not only connects the information they learn during the day to their prior knowledge and consolidates it with that prior knowledge, but it's also what prepares the brain to be able to learn new things the following day. So the delta waves improve this efficiency of how we process and store information, and then they allow the brain to be ready to learn new information the following day. This is why sleep, again, is so crucial to learning, and yet it is one of the main problems. If you read the literature that deals with sleep in college students, you find what I consider a very depressing picture, is which percentages sometimes as high as 40% of college students report that they do not get even a minimum of 7 hours of sleep a night. And of course, adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep, teenagers 9 to 10, and that this lack of sleep means that the delta waves don't have the time that they need in order to process this information. The transferring of this information happens between the hippocampus, the center of working memory. Basically, I always tell teachers that what you're really doing is teaching to the hippocampus, and that the important information, and that's a key word, important, the brain only tends to remember what we tell it is important to remember. About 99% of the sensory information that comes through our brain every day needs to be tossed aside because most of that sensory information is unimportant. The brain wants to focus on what is the most important information and clear out everything else. Jesus. The delta waves are crucial in this transformation. Okay, so how do we increase delta wave? Well, one, as I've mentioned now probably too many times, is the high quality sleep hygiene. Students need to get enough sleep. And if they're able to do that, they're going to experience higher quality in their recall of new learned information and better ability to consolidate that information with their prior knowledge. Meditation, as I'll mention several times during this presentation, plays a significant role in the ability to improve not only delta wave function, but the function of most of the brain waves that are involved in learning. Yoga's a good way to do it because it reduces stress and produces relaxation, and then regular exercise, which since John Ratey's book about 20 years ago about exercise in the brain has pointed out that exercise is one of the most important things learners can do to improve their performance. What inhibits delta waves? Unfortunately, one of the main things is alcohol. Drugs like Valium or Xanax, unfortunately, also interfere with delta wave improvement. And then any other kind of disorders that would implicate or have an effect on the sleep of a student would unfortunately inhibit delta waves. The next one we're going to talk about is the theta wave. This is a brain wave that operates at about 4 to 8 hertz. And theta waves are crucial to the encoding of new information and memory consolidation. So the new information that students are learning has to be encoded so that it can be connected to prior knowledge. It has to be organized and consolidated. Theta waves play the major role in doing this. And they do that by connecting the hippocampus to the cortex for long-term memories. This is the pathway that the brain uses to transfer information during REM sleep. Also, theta waves can prevent stress-induced mental blocks. In other words, they can reduce the stress that a student feels, which allows their brains to process that information efficiently and effectively. The other role that theta waves play in brain rewiring is that when we learn new motor skills in particular, we've always known that during REM sleep, our brain will practice newly learned motor skills thousands of times. Musicians have found that something they were working on the night before, they actually perform better the next morning following sleep. We now know that it's theta waves that play a role in that particular motor task being practiced so often that it actually improves during sleep. Theta waves are responsible for stabilizing and organizing these memories that are acquired during the day. So you have the delta waves that operate during sleep that transfer the information. You have theta waves that organize that information. These are what allow us to form long-term memories so that the information students are learning is then organized in a form that can be transferred from the hippocampus to the neocortex. And as a result of that, there's better memory performance. They all play their major role in learning. The other things we know is that if we want to increase theta wave production, we can do that simply, but again, by using meditation or mindfulness or listening to binaural beats, which are tones of about 4 to 8 hertz. You'll find that term throughout this presentation. It's used in many different hertzes that will produce different brainwave function. Also, what will increase theta production is engaging in artistic, musical, or writing activities. Also, again, yoga, things that gentle movements that encourage theta wave action. What inhibits it is anything that would disrupt the REM sleep, which is where this activity takes place. Also, when we engage in active cognitive learning, we're not going to be using theta waves. We're going to be using probably beta and waves in particular. We also know, and you'll find throughout this presentation, that alcohol has a pretty negative effect overall on brain function related to new learning. The next one is alpha waves. These are the waves that we call our calming, idle mode, basic kinds of things. When we close our eyes, when we daydream, we engage the flow state or the alpha wave states of the brain. What their role is in learning.
Hey, Terry, we're not seeing the slides as they change, or they're not changing.
This happened last time.
There you go.
I don't understand why you didn't tell me this 10 slides ago. That would have been helpful.
Now they should, using the arrow keys, change for you every time.
Can you see them changing now?
Yep.
They were following along at the beginning. It just got out of the track somewhere along the way.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's pick up with our alpha waves, which are involved in our ability of the brain to sustain attention. Most importantly, from a learning standpoint, these are the brain waves that filter out irrelevant internal and external distractions. So if you think of alpha waves as the calming effect, this is the process the brain uses to be able to sustain its attention, which is necessary for learning new information. So you can see, as I've been discussing, is that each one of the brain waves plays a specific role, but they also interact with each other to produce the ultimate learning process for the brain. So this is alpha waves result in improved memory recall, better comprehension, efficient processing, because they are involved in being able to focus the brain, create the attention that's necessary for students to stay on task. And especially when it comes to creative thinking or complex problem solving, the mind is more calm and able to focus its attention where it needs to be in order to succeed. By having a more relaxed state that we get through alpha waves, we actually reduce the cognitive load. And by this, we mean we reduce the outside stresses, the anxieties, the disruptions, the things that would interfere with us being able to pay attention. You can see as we continue our discussion, if students had a better understanding that this is how their brain learns and the role that these waves, brain waves play, they might be able to see why the behaviors and actions that we want them to take are so crucial, and that when they don't get enough sleep, or they drink too much alcohol, or they engage in other activities that are contrary to the learning process, how they make it very difficult for their brains to come close to learning at an optimal level. So what improves alpha waves? Well, meditation, again, because it calms the brain, deep breathing exercises, anything that was going to cause the body and brain to relax is good for increasing alpha wave production. Simply closing our eyes. Anytime we actually just close our eyes and take a moment, we're actually increasing alpha wave production. Okay. Avoiding alcohol, taking breaks. What inhibits? Two things in particular, and one is just fine. One is when we have to engage in cognitive effort and sensory stimulation. When we're paying attention in class, now we're fully engaged and we're able to take on new information. All of that is a good thing, but it also inhibits alpha wave production. So beta waves, the next one, which is 13 to 30 hertz, so a much more active kind of brain wave. It is what is responsible for enhancing concentration, which leads to our ability to do problem solving and our cognitive flexibility. So beta waves help the brain stay alert, process information, and manage working memory. So these are the brain waves that are vital to the actual learning process, the active learning process that students are going through in their course and study. They are resulting in brain's ability to deal with demanding tasks, solve complex problems, and then the processing of that new information. So each one, as you can see, the different waves play a significant role in the learning process of the brain. They assist the brain in switching between tasks, engaging in its critical thinking processes, and managing its working memory. So what increases beta waves? This is where exercise plays a significant role. High intensity workouts, aerobic exercise, which also results in the increased production of BDNF, the protein that underlies all basic learning. The brain is basically unable to learn much of anything without BDNF being present. Exercise also is responsible for an increase in the production of dopamine, and serotonin and norepinephrine, which all play a role in our ability to pay attention, stay on task, and learn new things. Believe it or not, coffee can be a contributor to improving beta wave production. And again, different sounds at different particular hertz or cycles can improve, in this case, beta waves. What inhibits beta waves is too much multitasking, screen time, or noisy environments. Also, poor sleep. This is one of the things that students need to understand about this idea of doing multitasking, and they don't seem to have any grasp about how negative screen time is to their brain's ability to process and to learn new information. Lastly, gamma waves, which have the highest cycle, 30 to 100 hertz, are crucial for learning, memory formation, and the processing of high performance. In other words, the brain is at its best in terms of learning new information when gamma waves are present. They're responsible for synchronizing the activity, connecting sensory inputs into a unified perception. What does that mean? It means that when students are taking in both auditory information, visual information, tactile information, as they are working in groups or in class, gamma waves are responsible for being able to integrate those three sensory inputs into a united perception so the students can understand what it is they're being asked to learn. Also, gamma plays a role in improving working memory and overall enhances our cognitive abilities. It's associated with the ultimate concentration and mental alertness. This is when our brain is at its peak in terms of its ability to learn new information and to find that information connected to prior knowledge. Gamma waves also facilitate cognitive functioning, which allows for intense focus, attention, sensory perception. All those things that I was just mentioning are a response to the gamma waves in our brain. What increases them, again, meditation, exposure to lighter sound at a particular hertz, 40 hertz in this particular case. Also, again, the different tones and sounds. And this one you're probably very excited about is eating walnuts, almonds, or dark chocolate actually increases gamma activity. So that's something that I find personally a great thing to know and that I imbibe in probably more than I should. Okay, so what else? We know that increasing gamma waves results in from memory exercises and physical exercises. So the crossword puzzles and all these kinds of things actually help us increase gamma wave production. What inhibits it are two main things. One is cannabis, THC, and the other is ketamine. If you read the literature specifically about gamma waves in the brain, and then you start thinking about the legalization of cannabis through, I think now 38 states, and you start thinking about the high school and college students who imbibe in cannabis, you begin to get some concern about how that may impact their brain functions, their learning ability, as it is particularly reduces gamma's effectiveness in terms of its ability to help us learn. Okay, so what inhibits gamma waves? Brain inflammation of any kind, stress, anxiety, and then unfortunately, we know that gamma production or activity declines as we age. So let me take you through basically, I know I went kind of fast with that, but here are some of the basic things that I think will help kind of bring this all together. Scientists at Berkeley found that the patterns that we talk about, the rhythms of all the brain waves together, is what allows us to consolidate our memories from the previous day. So it is in fact brainwave activity that allows us to take in new information, organize that new information, pass that new information from the hippocampus to the neocortex, and then form consolidated, eventually long-term memories for that information. Specifically, when we have slow wave sleep, the delta rhythms I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, when they are combined with the production of sleep spindles, which are high bursts of fast electrical activity, this is when it allows the brain to most effectively form memories. Studies have found that when people have, to put it in a simple form, more sleep spindles, they actually have enhanced memory consolidation. In one study, we found that up to 30% more information was remembered from learning sessions from the day before when they had the connection between the delta waves and the sleep spindles that occur during sleep. How do you improve production of sleep spindles? Well, believe it or not, one of the things you can do is engage in intensive learning tasks before bed, like word location, procedural tasks. These kinds of things actually increase the production of sleep spindles, which combined with delta waves make memory formation more effective. Also, there are things called closed loop acoustic stimulations, which also result in improved sleep spindle production. Okay, so our brains need sleep, as I've mentioned probably 10 times, in order for the transfer of this information to take place. Students need to come to an understanding of just how incredibly important sleep's role is in their learning and their memory formation, and how much they sabotage their own learning when they don't get the kind of sleep that they need. The next thing I want to mention with this slide is that there is a genetic component to the effectiveness of our brain waves, and that some people who have a particular variant of the COMT gene actually have been shown in studies to have a 25% advantage in working memory capacity. So there is a possibility that some students simply have a built-in intelligence advantage over other students simply based on their genetic makeup. The good news is that our life experiences, our education, our acquired skills reshape and rewire, of course, the brainwave patterns. And this, in fact, can overcome these genetic disadvantages. Another thing that the research points out very clearly is that musical training can enhance brain rhythms. People who are full-time musicians, people that have studied full-time musicians, find that their brainwave activity is greater, and that things like learning to read music and coordinating hands independently, like playing the piano or the guitar, all of these things sculpt these brain patterns. And so what happens as a result of the improvement in the oscillatory patterns or the brain waves is improved verbal memory, pattern recognition, and even in some cases, mathematical reasoning. So we've heard for years, that there was a Mozart effect or this or that, but what there really is a musical training effect that has a very positive impact on the brain. As I mentioned, several brain waves are improved through meditation. There are multiple kinds of meditation, but all of them translate into measurable cognitive advantages. In fact, one study published in the Frontiers of Psychology found that just 8 weeks of meditating 20 minutes a day had a significant improvement in brainwave function. So it isn't like you have to have been a meditator for 1,000 days or years and years. As little as 8 weeks with 20 minutes of practice can improve and create better brainwave function. This is an interesting thing, especially when I delved into this research in the last couple of years. I used to tell students, because I taught study skills for ages, and I've been on the circuit talking to faculty all over the world, is that students should not listen to music when they're trying to study, that it's a distraction. And to a certain extent, that's still true. Music that has lyrics in particular is a distraction. But music actually has a direct line to the rhythms of the brain. And certain music, in this case about 60 beats per minute, can actually positively interact with cognitive performance and actually improve memory. So this study found that when students listen to Baroque music, which is typically at about 60 to 70 beats per minute, they actually showed improved retention of information than those who didn't. So there is an element of being able to listen to certain kinds of music that students should be encouraged to do, especially when they're doing their studies. As I've mentioned several times, exercise has a huge role to play in learning. John Rady, the psychiatrist from Harvard, says it is the single most important thing a person can do to improve their learning is engage in physical movement and aerobic exercise. For example, studies have shown that when we walk at a comfortable pace, we actually generate a rhythm that creates a sensory feedback that engages our brain waves. A German study found that walking at this natural cadence actually enhanced alpha wave production. And these and the rhythmic nature of our exercise, whether it's running or cycling, also has a positive influence on brain oscillation. Movement of any kind is really good for learning. That's why schools have such a challenge these days. They were built for students not to move very easily, especially with the desks and chairs and tables the way they are. And yet movement has shown itself to be one of the most positive things related to improved learning. Of course, vascular exercise improves all kinds of aspects of our physical health, as well as the volume of the hippocampus can actually be increased through aerobic types of exercise. So that's what I have to share. No, it was kind of fast, but I wanted to make sure that I got through and gave you at least a general overview of what the research is showing. It's fairly new in terms of, as I mentioned in one of the first slides, is we've known about brain waves since 1924, but we never had a very good understanding of what they did and what role they played, especially in the learning process. It's now become much clearer that brain waves play the most important role in how the brain actually communicates and how the brain waves interact with each other to produce the kind of learning and memory that we take for granted. So thank you for listening. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, they're kind of silent.
Okay, that's fine. I hope it was clear. I know I went a little fast, but I wanted to make sure I got it in the time, 50 minutes that I had.
It was plenty clear. Well,
You might have this in your slide deck somewhere, but is there a particular book that has kind of a understandable summary of some of these latest findings on brainwaves related to pedagogy or teaching?
The last slide that I showed there says that some of the information I took for this presentation came from a summary of a major article that was written about brainwaves. If you look at that last slide, it'll direct you to my Substack area, and that article is there. and it goes into much greater detail than I did. And it gives you access to the main article that I summarized. And I think that would be really helpful to look at.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Bob, thanks for inviting me. You did a great job with this conference. It's quite an undertaking.
Yeah, it is, but I thank you for taking the time to share some really great information with us.
You're welcome. Thanks now. See everybody.